Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, to Lead for Good, a show for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. My name is Chris Looney, and I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into nonprofit leadership. Our show endeavors to cover the most important nonprofit leadership topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as nonprofit leaders. Today, we welcome Casey Castillo, a strategic leader and a hands-on advocate for food security and systemic resilience in the community. Casey is the current CEO of the Jacobs and Cushman San Diego Food Bank, a large and impactful food bank with a mission to provide nutritious food to people in need, but to also advocate for the hungry and to educate the public about hunger-related issues. So welcome to the show, Casey. Thanks for joining us.
Well, appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome, and we're grateful to have you. We're going to learn a lot. You said something to me before we got our show underway that just hit me like a ton of bricks, and that was that the food bank collected, I think it was last year, 52 million pounds of food, distributed 43 million meals, and served 400,000 people a month. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So we're actually, we operate on a fiscal year, which will end, our fiscal year will end in just 2 weeks. And we're on pace to exceed 52 million pounds this year, which is 2 million more than last year. It's the second highest in our 48-year history, only really compares to peak COVID year. And as you mentioned, that 52 million pounds translates to more than 43 million meals countywide, which allows us through our amazing network of nonprofit partners, our dozen programs that we have internally to reach 400,000 people per month.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, I know it's a credit to your leadership, but also to the team and the great people that you have involved with the organization. It's a big community and with lots of needs, but also with lots of wonderfully supportive people. So congratulations on that accomplishment. I know you wish it wasn't something you had to do, though.
You know, I think we're the only maybe type of organization or industry that talks consistently about putting ourselves out of business. We really mean that. We really would we love the idea of hunger no longer being an issue and that we, wouldn't be necessary. But we are, and you're absolutely right. It does take a team. We have a fantastic team, works really hard out in the community. I mentioned our nonprofit partners. We have over 450 nonprofit partners. These are hunger relief nonprofit partners that come and get their food from us, and they distribute that food in their neighborhoods. We couldn't do that work without them. Of the 400,000 people that we serve, they're reaching 200,000 to 300,000 through that network. And then we reach with our direct distributions about 125,000 to 150 each month. So it's a well-oiled machine, takes a lot of people, a lot of amazing organizations. And I also want to mention our volunteers. We had over 15,000 volunteers last year.
Oh, that's great to know.
At both of our warehouses and out distribution sites. So couldn't do it without them. And then we have amazing donors and supporters that are behind us. They support our mission. And all of that put together means, great work going on in the community, and we're reaching a lot of hungry folks, a lot of hungry families.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, keep up the good work. You didn't sort of show up day one as the leader you are today. I know that it's been an evolutionary process, as it is for all leaders. I'd be interested to have some understanding of how you became the leader you are today. How did you get here? What are your experiences in the for-profit, nonprofit, whatever world that led you to this, CEO position?
It wasn't a direct path. It's a long journey. I'm not one that I imagined, but was, I think, really willing to kind of go with the flow and put myself out there, and it ultimately led to this. When you asked that question, I was reminded. I was asked to speak to our congregation on Father's Day about fathers. And so your question really leads me to how I got here. It starts with my parents. I give
Okay.
them a lot of credit. Have amazing parents. Learn from them lots of amazing lessons. Be fearless, work hard, be resilient, and then ultimately success will follow. And so that was
Yeah.
kind of my roadmap, and it worked. Um, I've approached, I think, every job, especially in the nonprofit sector, with that same spirit. And I also quickly realized that I am mission driven. And I've been fortunate enough to work for organizations with powerful, meaningful missions. Um, and along the way, I embraced opportunities to take on roles outside of my formal scope,
Okay.
even when they felt uncomfortable or unfamiliar. For example, my first nonprofit role, I was on the program side. That's what I was hired to do, and I about 6 months in, I took a promotion. That put me in proximity of our CEO. My office was down very close to the CEO at the time, and she came into my office one day and said, "Hey, Casey, are you familiar with QuickBooks?" And I did not lie, but I gave a cagey answer. I said, "Sure." I'd never used QuickBooks, but I was
I've heard of
familiar
it.
with what it did, and so she needed my help, and so I jumped in again outside my scope. And what turned into a project, a couple day project, led to a couple months, and then ultimately led to me becoming a CFO.
Hmm.
Um, and again, looked outside of my scope, was willing to help in the organization, and took advantage of opportunities that were before me. Um, that CFO role ended up leading me to the CFO role here at the San Diego Food Bank. And then quickly within here at the food bank, within a year, the board asked me to not just continue with my role as CFO and VP administration, but asked me to take on all parts of the organization except fundraising, which was an opportunity I jumped at. And I think all of those things really led and really prepared me to be CEO here.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd also add over the years, I've been given great autonomy in my roles, and I think that's how I lead now. I like to bring in talented professionals and give them space and the support to thrive in. And so, yeah, that's my journey. Uh, be willing to serve and to help in ways that maybe you're not comfortable with, you're not familiar with. Jump in, do the hard work, take advantage of those opportunities, and that'll prepare you for bigger things. And I think that prepared me to be CEO now.
Clearly, yeah, that's great. Well, what's been your favorite role of all of them over those years? Is there one that you just sort of look back to and say, that time was great. That was my happy place, or that was my favorite.
I'm going to lump all my CFO roles together. But there are some times that have stood out over my career. My first CFO opportunity, I really appreciated the changes I was able to make and how they impacted not only our financial statements,
Hmm.
but changes that I made that actually impacted our programs and how we operated and how we serve the community and how we fulfilled our missions. So there's a couple of those examples where went into an organization that was struggling financially, and quickly, because of decisions, strategic decisions we were able to make, able to turn it around quickly and better fulfill our missions, which meant we were better serving the community. So things like that stood out. But this is a tough question because, again, I've loved every second of being a CFO. That role gave me a chance to not only focus on financial stewardship, but also drift a bit outside traditional boundaries and do
Right.
some innovative and unique things, especially here in the food bank. There's some things that the San Diego Food Bank does that really unique across the country. And so that that I loved and like being part of that. Leading the budget process year after year allowed me to help set our course and shape the future in meaningful ways. That said, I would say leading an organization like the food bank as CEO is an honor, and the ability to set the tone and vision, guided by the insight and influence of an incredible team, as I mentioned before, that's hard to beat. This role has stretched me, challenged me, and helped me grow in ways I never anticipated.
Mhm.
That development is what ultimately sets, I think, this apart from my other roles. So I'd have to go with my current role as CEO of the San Diego Food Bank.
Yeah, yeah, totally understand why. You mentioned your parents early in terms of their support, their mentorship, maybe even, and defining some of the characteristics that you imbue today. I'd be interested if there are others that you can point to that were particularly important mentors for you on your leadership journey. Who were they? What did they do for you? And how do you view mentorship?
Yeah, I think that's also an interesting question. As I think about it, and over my history, professional history, I haven't had a lot of great managers. I think that's probably the reality.
Yeah,
I've often, in talking about this, shared that I probably learned a lot more about what not to do. Although that's a great lesson, and maybe even better lesson
of
than learning
course.
than learning from outstanding managers. But there have been a few, and again, I started with my parents, and I'll start there again. I mean, they've been incredibly influential. They were small business owners. They instilled in me an entrepreneurial mindset that has kind of shaped how I lead, I believe. It's encouraged me to think outside the box in creative ways, take initiative, and really be comfortable operating outside of that box.
Right.
But I'd also say there have been several exceptional board members over the years who have become trusted mentors, and these are board members that have reached incredible heights, right, top of their profession, and have done some incredible things throughout their career. And so it's a real honor to have them as mentors. Their experience, insight, and willingness to offer that guidance has been invaluable, and not only helping me make sound decisions for the organization, but also playing a key role in my growth as a professional and a leader. There's probably three or four of those mentors, I'd say four board members that I've had just here at the food bank over the last 15 years that have been pretty incredible. And many of them are still board members, but those that aren't, I still continue to have a really strong relationship with. And I use them as advisors when
Yeah.
sometimes that's even better than going to our current board members because of the relationships that we built and that trust. And I go to them frequently, just about any type of business related matter. I know I can count on them.
Yeah, I love that you brought up board members as being mentors. I, of course, in these conversations have heard about managers. Um, Oftentimes, there's a particular boss, supervisor, manager that has been meaningful to a person, given them a chance that took a risk on them, let's say, or took them under their wing and brought them along. But to your point, so often bad managers are great instructors as well. It's not a mentor relationship, but it's very instructive and vital to have had that experience to know what not to do or how to handle things differently to even just sharpen your leadership skills a bit.
Well, I think I learned from some of those experiences about the manager I didn't want to be, right? I think
Hmm.
those are some of my first lessons. That's not who I want to be. That's not how I want to treat people. That's not how to inspire and motivate people. And so that I think those were important lessons. And then, over time, I was able to see other people that were exceptional in those ways. Maybe not direct leaders, but to soak that in for people that I was associated with, and learn from people on how they motivate, how they inspire. So I've been around it. It hasn't necessarily, outside of board members, been in direct leadership, but still close enough to pick up on those valuable lessons.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of lessons and sort of philosophies and practices of leadership, I'd be interested to know what kind of philosophy you have in terms of your own leadership. Do you have a personal nonprofit leadership philosophy, or are there certain characteristics, elements, philosophies that you just hold on to when you think about the way you lead?
Um, and I think I mentioned this earlier. My philosophy, and let's just stay at 30,000 foot,
Yeah.
is let's make sure we establish a clear vision.
Okay.
Let's make sure that, and it could be a collect. I understand, I get to set the tone. But here the food bank brought in a lot of talented leaders. And so I really feel like this is a shared vision. They all have influence and can help shape that vision. But establishing a clear vision, I think, is important. Creating a strong team, the right players, A players, and then letting them do their thing. I'm not a micromanager. I know, because I've been here so long and I've led in all areas of the organization. I know it inside out, but I'm not a micromanager. I let the team do their work, but I'm also here to support them in any way they need. And because, again, I've been here so long, I usually have historical reference that can help them in whatever problem they're facing. So that's just high level. I like to trust and believe in my team, and then let them um, have that autonomy. One of the things I think as a leader too, again, give them that autonomy, but I want to make sure they have the space that they need to think big, to solve big. Hunger, that's a big problem. So we have to come up with big solutions to do
Right.
that. Well,
Right.
I expect my team to do that, to be able to do that.
I love that. Thank you. That's perfect. Um, so, with each of our leader interviews, we focus on a few particular themes in the leadership realm. And today I'm excited because we're talking about how you can incorporate tools to build a great organizational culture. So, it kind of interestingly combines some of the things that I think you brought forward as a CEO, a CFO, some of those interesting ways to accomplish good things in ways that are not well known or not previously practiced, those tools, um, and and then combine it. And so um, let's jump in and let's start with what a great sort of organizational culture means to you, and how the heck do you know you have one?
Another outstanding question. So it means everything. I'll start there.
Good, good,
I
good.
think it means your employees feel cared for, that they truly belong, and that they're part of something meaningful. Again, I think that brings us back to our mission. We have a very compelling mission. It also means they're aligned with our values, and not just in words, but in how we show up every day. And I think we do a really good job of that. How do we know if we have that? Yeah, my answer is that we ask. That's how you know. You ask.
Okay.
We listen intentionally, and we do that through internal and external surveys, in-person conversations, and other forms of feedback. And then we measure. I think, again, it's not enough that you do these things, but you have to measure and try to understand that impact. We also evaluate what we're hearing, and track the key indicators, things like employee retention, engagement. I would say all of that helps us understand whether our culture is thriving or needs attention. We
Yeah.
ask, we continue to evaluate. And here's the thing about culture, and we do have strong culture. It's what we've seen. It's what we hear from our employees. So we feel really good about it. But just because we have great culture today doesn't mean we don't have to continue to work at it tomorrow. I mean,
Mm.
that's what I've learned. And so you can't stop. And there's always room for improvement. And that's really how we view that here at the San Diego Food Bank.
Yeah, great. Super. From your perspective, is it easier to build the right culture, let's say from the ground up, or by making incremental changes here or there, if it's not sort of an entirely bad culture that you're walking into?
I think a lot of things are easier to do if you have the opportunity to start from scratch. And thinking, we're gonna undergo a large construction project, and I think, it seems easier in some ways to start from the ground up.
Right.
So
Good analogy. Yeah.
I would start there, but most of us don't have that luxury. So when you're working within an existing culture, which I think most of us are, and it's what I've had to do, especially one that isn't entirely broken, I think making meaningful change requires more than small tweaks. I think that's probably the advice I would give. It takes
Perfect.
intentionality, clarity, and often some tough decisions. Lessons that I've learned, not just here at the food bank, but in previous organizations. If you need some tweaking with your culture, you're going to have to make tough decisions, and that's the reality. And you have to be prepared to do it if you want to truly make those changes, especially if they need to be transformational. You have to be willing to do it. You will reap the benefits, but you have to be willing to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And you've had to personally make some of those tough decisions. You've had to come in and um, tweak things that were probably sacred to certain people or certain programs. And your advice is to do it.
Well, yes, I think you do it. I mean, I'm not a person that lives with a lot of regrets, if any. But if you said pick one, it's that we didn't move faster in this area.
Okay.
We were probably a little too patient. We've learned that transformation in an existing environment means recognizing when someone or something isn't a great fit. So whether
Yeah.
that's culturally or behaviorally, and acting on that early is really the right thing to do. I would say at the food bank, have gotten much better at identifying those misalignments sooner rather than holding on for years.
Yeah.
Which again, the regret is it slows momentum. And I think the other outcome is, or consequence, is that it sends mixed messages to your team.
Mm.
And so we're much better at identifying the culture issues, maybe the misalignment, the bad fit, and then we are acting on it where we haven't always done that. And again, and I would also say, as our culture just continues to improve, it's easier to identify the contrast and those misalignments. And so I think that's another reason we're better at it, is that those non-culture fits stand out more than they
Mm.
used to. And then we've recognized that we have to act on that much faster.
Yeah, great. No, that's perfect. That answers a lot. But let's chat about those tools, some of the tools at least that you've used to help create the right organizational culture or that have helped you enhance the great culture that you have had or continue to build um, throughout this organization and potentially other organizations. And these are things that we've talked about before. So I took notes in a previous conversation. So we're kind of returning to a handful of tools that you mentioned to me were particularly interesting, and were at least interesting to me. So let's talk about them. And the first one is the five dysfunctions of a team. And I'd love for you to share with folks what that is and how it's helped you and how others might use it.
Yeah, Chris, when I was appointed CEO, one of the first things I did was want to create a new strategic plan. And so I went to the board. That was one of the first things I did. to the board to say, hey, I want support. I want to establish a new strategic plan, but also a new framework for how we were going to operate within the organization. And that meant creating or establishing a leadership team. And so created the leadership team framework, which led to a new strategic plan. But part of that framework was we were going to utilize tools to help with culture, with alignment, and help facilitate the creation of a new strategic plan to drive results. And so one of the first things we did as a leadership team is we read Patrick Lencioni's The Five Dysfunctions of a Team and started to use that assessment, which I guess if I were to explain it, is how you assess where teams struggle.
Okay.
And within this book and the assessment starts with a lack of trust. People don't feel safe being open or admitting mistakes. That leads to avoiding conflict. So important conversations never happen. And then without that healthy debate, there's no real commitment, which makes it hard to hold each other accountable. That's kind of the general model or feel for that book and that assessment. And then when accountability slips, people start focusing on their own goals rather than the larger, broader organizational priorities, right? That's when you start to get misaligned. So to build a strong team, you need to create trust, encourage open discussion, get everyone aligned, hold each other to high standards, and stay focused on shared results. And then so that's where we started. And now we take that survey and assessment, I would say, every year, and we're able to measure where we're improving, where we're maybe not improving or staying at level. And then that allows us to talk through that as a team and figure out how we address key areas that we'd like to see more improvement, or talk about, hey, our score, rose considerably from year to year. What were we doing? What was working? And so that's where we start. One of the areas where we started, and again, I think we're in year 3,
Okay.
and we continue to see improvements each year.
That's great. Interesting. Yeah. And I think that resource is going to be incredibly valuable to people who choose to look into it. So thanks for sharing that. Tell me a little bit about Metronome.
Yeah. So I mentioned the framework that we wanted to create and the philosophy that we would use as an organization and a leadership group to really align our key objectives. So Metronomics is a strategic planning framework that we chose. It blends long-term vision with short-term execution through tools like a one-page strategic plan. So that's what we have, a one-page strategic plan. When this was introduced to me, I didn't buy it, didn't believe it, didn't think we could get there, but we actually we are there, which is pretty exciting. Tools like 3HAG, so a 3-year highly achievable goal, and then also annual priorities, which we create. It's designed to align leadership around clear direction, to build accountability like we've talked about before, and drive predictable and sustainable growth, which we have seen quite a bit of the last 3 years. Metronome, by contract, so Metronomics, that's the strategic planning framework. Metronome is the software platform that helps the team kind of operationalize the framework. It brings strategy to life by tracking goals, KPIs, our meeting rhythms, and accountability in a centralized digital space. So it's a software, it's a platform. So while Metronomics provides a structured methodology, Metronome is the tool that allows us to execute that and stay on track in a visible way. Used together, they form really a powerful system for strategic alignment and growth. So our team members are in Metronome on a regular basis. In our leadership meetings, we utilize it, and then we have a broader, a larger framework to help us with that planning.
Yeah. And you found that these tools aren't burdensome in the sense that there's a lot of complaining about, oh, one more thing to do or to track or like I know that's always a
You
tension, right? Like,
It is actually, it is something that we talk about, and I won't say that there wasn't initial resistance, and I will, and it's something that I think we talk about on a regular basis, because again, part of this framework is that you want to remove the things that aren't productive, right?
Right,
Uh,
right,
you're
right, right.
focusing you're focusing on the things that are driving results. And typically that means, especially if you have large goals, you have fewer of them, right? And so, yes, we're not wanting to bog this team down. So we are often talking about that in terms of the meetings we're holding. Are they productive? Are they long enough, or are they too long? But also in the software we're using. So, and you bring up a great question, because right now, one of the things we're trying to do is tie in Metronome, that platform, with another platform we use for performance appraisals to make sure that we're not, as you point out, using duplicative systems. And so we're really trying to streamline those areas that we have identified. I'm not saying it's not something else that our team has now to manage. They do. I don't think it has been cumbersome. And I think we found ways over time to make sure it's not. I think overall, it's been a plus versus a minus. I think there are more wins than some of those negative things, like, another tool to use.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I only bring that up just because I know that there's a tension there about change, about introducing something new, about something that might be foreign or unfamiliar to someone, especially technology, which requires a certain level of adoption, and not everybody brings the same technical capabilities. So I'm glad to hear that you figured out a way that it's brought more value than pain points, I guess. And it's a journey.
It,
Um,
it is a journey, and I would say it's something that requires consistent evaluation. So I think the question you ask is one that we just have to continue to ask, right? And right now, what we're hearing is it's providing value. Even though it's another system, it's providing value and working for us. But that may not always be the case. And so I think
sure.
it's important to continue to ask that question.
Yeah. Good, 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 good. Okay. So the next one is adaptive insight. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so I think when we spoke earlier in a previous conversation, I referred to it as an adaptive insight. And what I meant was Clifton Strengths, so formerly known as Strength Finders. So that is also a tool early on we introduced to the leadership team. It's a strength-based assessment tool that helps individuals identify their top talents to better understand how they naturally think, feel, and behave. We
Hmm.
originally completed this as a leadership team to foster self-awareness and collaboration. And now many of our directors have since expanded its use within their departments to support their team development and performance. So it really allows you to, for others to see how, well, for yourself and for others, how you communicate, how you like to be communicated to, and other things like that. And I'll give you an example. One of our team members shared when we were going through this process early on, one of our fundraisers that I've known and worked with for a long time. She pointed out an example where she would often come into my office and with great news. She would say, "Hey, we just got a $10,000 check from a donor I talked to last week," or something like that. And she would come in all excited, and then I would start asking questions. Oh, have we received a donation from the same donor for the same amount previously? How long have they been a donor? Do they attend any of our events? And I would just, have a myriad of questions. And she would say, I don't know. I just came in to tell you the good news. And but she said, especially after reviewing, because we shared all of this and showed where everybody falls, on the spectrum. And she said, after looking at that, I've changed the way I approach Casey. And if I have good news to share, I will do a little bit of research on that donor, because I'm anticipating he's going to ask me questions and I want to be able to answer them. And so again, that's just a simple example, but these are kind of the value adds that you get from utilizing a tool like this, to understand how to better communicate with your coworkers, your boss, people that you are supervising. And it goes beyond communication. It goes to a lot of just individual, talents that really come in into play in our behavior and how we operate around each other on a daily basis. So again, and I think the value of that was shown in the fact that our directors then said, "Hey, I want to do this with my team." And so we've seen a lot of that in most of our teams, and I think we've seen some success with that tool.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's interesting because I always struggle with some of the self-assessment tools because I think to myself, I'm never going to remember what I've just learned about that person and their scores and how they need to be communicated with. And that's not the focus really necessarily to memorize
Yeah,
how to react. I think what's interesting for a lot of people to understand, I suppose, about the process of going through the adaptive insights is that it gets people around a table talking to each other and explaining their strengths, some of the ways they are, and how they like to be communicated, and it just brings humanity to a conversation because prior to these kinds of activities, you could have blinders on, you could
yeah.
be siloed, you could just be all up in your own head around what I need and I need to do and why doesn't anyone help me? And you forget that you're a team. You
Yeah.
forget that there's humanity in these people and it's great to understand what makes them tick and where they think their strengths are.
You're right. I think that's a great point. And we did this with, a team of 15, and you're right. I'm not going to remember everyone. But I think it's more than that. I think one, you might learn a little bit about yourself because I think we do have blinders. There were people that were surprised when the results. Maybe the people around them weren't surprised, but there were people that were
That's
surprised
funny,
themselves,
right?
their
Wait,
results.
you
Uh,
didn't know that about
you
yourself?
didn't know that about yourself. And I think it allows you to be targeted, right? You don't have to remember all 15 people and their talents and what makes them tick and how they like to be communicated to. But if you are struggling with somebody, you could be targeted in that you could say, I do want to know a little bit more about their
Oh, that's
results.
good. That's
I
good.
want to know a
Yeah.
little bit more about how I can better communicate with them, or what is it about our interaction that's falling apart or not working for us. And so I think that is helpful. And again, you're right. Is that one of the things that you do and then you put it in a drawer and you never look at it again? It could be, but I think the way our team has used it is that they are looking at it more frequently. And then we typically, when we have introduced new team players, especially on the leadership side, we have them do that, and so we can add it to our overall kind of metrics and spectrum chart that we've created. So yeah, so I think you're right. I mean, again, it's how you use the tool, and it's do you use it consistently. I think
Yeah.
that's going
Yeah.
to really determine the success you have with the tool.
Yeah. So when you're in the office and you say, where on the spectrum are you? It
Different
has a
meaning.
different meaning. It has a
Different
different meaning.
meaning. Maybe I
Okay,
should say
good.
quadrant. Where on the quadrant are you?
Yeah, you could get yourself into trouble there, Casey. But I understand because I was thinking how interesting it would be to plot everyone in their different spectrums or quadrants or whatever. That would be fascinating, right?
Well, so I think you bring up another point. I mean, is how we looked at it. And then we, as a leadership team, we said, you know what? We're really heavy in this quadrant. And we really don't have anybody in this other quadrant. It really, makes you think about your hiring practices at that point.
That's
And
a diversity issue you never thought you'd
do we
tangle with.
need more of that? Do you have doers or do you have big thinkers?
Yeah, right, right.
And those are things I think you should be looking at if you want a well balanced and diverse group of leaders.
Yeah, I was just in a board meeting yesterday, and I'm thinking to myself, I think we should all take this test as board members to figure out if we're missing the boat a little bit on having certain skills, because to your point, we might all be not doers, or we might be all doers, and we might need a variety of different types of people to do our best job as board members.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating, but I think there are things you can learn from it. And if you're willing then after the assessment to target, those areas where you think you can improve or you can, fill a gap, that's when you start to see the value. And I think you start to move the needle on things.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. That's great. Fun kind of thinking there. I appreciate that. You've mentioned the self-assessments that you've done, and I'd love to know what you can tell us about what those are and how they help.
So we also at the time deployed an organizational health assessment, OHA, which is
OHA, okay.
which is a comprehensive evaluation designed to understand how effectively an organization functions across key areas that drive long-term success. So it provides a structured look at components such as leadership and strategy, promotion and brand awareness, fundraising performance, delivery of services, so our programs, and the strength of internal systems and operations. It also will track governance. I mean, really, it's a long list, probably of 8 or 9 key components, and they're really fairly tailored to us and what we do.
Hmm,
And
okay.
rather than relying solely on just financial or programmatic outcomes, right, which a lot of organizations do, this allows you to look at other things. And I would say this assessment takes a kind of deeper dive into scoring each of these areas to identify strengths and pinpoint opportunities for improvement. We've had, especially in the early years, we had board members complete the survey to provide their kind of valuable governance level perspective. Um, Again, we did that in year 1 and 2. Now we just are having our leadership team take it on an annual basis. So I think we just completed year 3 with our leadership team. And it's a way for us to measure progress over time in all of those key components. And it's interesting. I think we're being much more diligent in the questions that are being asked now. I think just thinking about our last discussion as we reviewed our last OHA and those results, we really had team members start to say, I understand these are the results we're getting, but maybe we should take a look at the question and how it's being asked, right?
Hmm,
To make sure the results align with what we think, this is telling us. And so we're really diving deeper into the questions, what those questions are focused on, and if those are relevant. So I like it. I like the next step here, the next iteration in how we're using the OHA. But again, it just now I can look back and I can say 3 years ago, where were we? Where have we made improvements? Which areas maybe have lagged or not seen the level improvements that we want to see? And it's just another area that we can then focus in on if we think it's appropriate.
That's great. That's great. Well, the last tool we wanted to bring forward is the Net Promoter Score tool that you've used. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about what that is and how you've used it.
Yeah, and no, I'm throwing a lot of tools at you right now.
Yeah, how do
Uh,
you keep them all straight? We'll talk about that later, but yeah,
well, and to go back to one of your previous questions about, it's just another thing that you've added, and is it cumbersome or is it bogging? Could it bog the team down? It sounds like a lot, but to be honest, we haven't found it to be a lot. A lot of these things are things that don't take a whole lot of time once they are already created. And so the Net Promoter Score is also something that I deployed pretty early on when I was appointed CEO. It's a metric used to gauge overall satisfaction and loyalty by asking how likely someone is to recommend an organization to others. So I'm sure you've seen this, Chris. I'm sure everybody out there listening or viewing this has seen if you've gotten them from airports, from airlines, you've gotten them from hotels. You've seen these before. We renamed ours employee feedback survey because we deployed it just internally with our employees.
perfect.
Uh, and as a way to measure kind of internal engagement. And we were proud to have increased our score each of the last 3 years. So it's a simple question about, would you recommend the San Diego Food Bank to others, to friends and family? It's one score, and then there's an opportunity to provide comments beyond that. And so we review that on an annual basis. We measure our score, and then we review all the comments. And then we use those comments to then congregate them to see if there's any themes. And then if there's something that we really think we need to address, we've done things like create an employee task force in the past so that they can really look in and be very specific to those things that were identified that we want to address. And then they come up with a plan, an action plan on how to do that. And so again, easy to do. It's something that we deploy once a year, and then we review the results and then determine if we need to act on those results.
And you said it's one question, just that one question?
It's just one question. And we are using it internally with our employees, but that NPS can be deployed to our nonprofit partners. It can be deployed to volunteers. We can send that out to donors. It can be used in a variety of ways, and it's probably something we will take a look at in the future. But now we're using it primarily just as an employee feedback survey. One question. Again, they have an opportunity to provide a comment as well, and we measure the score and track that score, and we review all the comments.
And it's on a scale of 1 to 10, I suppose, or 1 to
Yes.
100, 1 to 10.
1 to 10. Yep.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
And a score of 8 to 10, I believe, is you're a promoter. And then below that really changes. I think 5 to 7 has its own term, and then
Are they anonymous?
it is anonymous.
Yeah. So if enough people make a comment, let's say, about a certain thing, then that's sufficient to kind of move forward with an investigation, if you will, or an exploration, I should say, of what that's all about, right?
Absolutely. Yep. We put all of those comments together, and then we put them into themes. And then we look at the size of the themes. How often was this brought up? What's the severity of this issue, if it is an issue? I mean,
Yeah.
again, we get high scores that we're proud of. And so even if somebody gives us a 10, they might say, keep up the great work or something like that, right? So we might get a lot of comments like that. But if there are comments about, I wish internal communication was better, then we will track that and then determine what action is necessary to address.
It's great. That's wonderful. Very smart tools. Um, how do you keep it all straight? Like, I know you're a smart guy. But it's not just tools that your job requires you to think through, initiate, and follow up with. You've got a million other things that you're responsible for. How do you keep all of these tools straight so that you don't, I forgot to do the net promoter score this year. How could I forget that? Like, how do you keep that straight?
Yeah, well, it's not just me. I think that's the good thing, and that's how we keep it straight. I do use a facilitator. We do have a strategic planner that I brought on 3 years ago. At the same time, we started to deploy a lot of these tools. So, and I have an executive team, and really the combination of all of that, we've been able to maintain and really create some rhythms. And it really, I don't think that really has been a struggle. I know in this 30, 40 minutes, we've been able to really talk about a lot of the tools that we're using, but a lot of this stuff is deployed throughout the year at different times of the year.
Oh, you don't do it all in one day?
We don't do it all in one day. So again, we've been able, combination of the leadership team we put together, the facilitator that we're using, we've been really able to find a rhythm that works for us.
Yeah.
And again, we're continuing to do it, and we continue to do it because we're finding success. And I think all of these things have really driven the results that we've seen over the past several years. They've been pretty incredible. I'll give you an example. Our facilitator in year one really pushed us as we were identifying and establishing annual priorities, right? Organizational annual priorities. Her advice was that we kept it at 5 or less. And the team is made up of a bunch of overachievers, and we came up with 11. And she tried to discourage us from doing that. And
Right.
we said, no, we're a bigger team. We can do this. And our facilitator went back to her mentor and her facilitator and kind of shared that experience and said, hey, I tried to talk them out of it. Food Bank wants to do 11. And she said, what should I do? And her facilitator said, well, let them fail. Let them do it. Let them fail. And she
So
said,
good.
okay. And then 6 months later, she went back to her facilitator and she said, hey, they're on pace to meet or exceed all 11 goals. And the facilitator said, okay, they're not going to fail, but it also says they can do it. They can handle it, right? And so yeah, we do things as a team, and I think a lot of things that we talked through and about today really have led to the success that we've had as a team and as an organization. So, and when things stop making sense, then part of our culture is that we'll pivot and we'll change course.
Yeah, but I heard in there, and it wasn't explicit, but I heard in there that you had a willingness to fail if you were going to. You decided against the guidance, let's say, to go with 11 goals that might have
Yeah.
seemed maybe too aggressive or too much. But I think you probably said we're going to do it, and ideally we're going to hit all 11, but we might fail on some, and that's okay, right?
Yeah, and that's really, and thank you for mentioning that. That was really something I had to think a lot about, and really had to be, I think, a strong communicator with the team about that. Because my take is yes, if you're going to hit all 11, then maybe you didn't set high enough goals, right? And we want to set big goals, and so it's really if it getting that through to the team, changing the culture in that way is also me telling them it's safe to fail, right? We're going to set big goals. That's what I want to do. That's what I expect you to do. If we don't get there all the way, that's okay, right? That's okay. If we see some progress, if the goal, if I freak our fundraising team out and say, I want you to raise an additional $10 million this year, right? And their heads explode. And they say, what if we don't do it? And I say, well, what if instead of having that goal, we do nothing, right? Or what if we do 10 million goal and you raise 8, right? That's a win. That's a win. You didn't reach 10. That's not the failure. The gain is the win, the $8 million. And so that was really something we had to talk through early on as a leadership group. They had to know that it was okay if they were going to fail from time to time. Now, again, this is a very strong team, and so we haven't seen a whole lot of failure, but they do need to know that it's okay to not hit every goal.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I appreciate you highlighting the importance of good communication around the um, the acceptability of certain failure, because as a leader, you always want to charge ahead. You want to maintain a very large shared vision and help the team be extraordinarily successful. But it would be strange to not fail from time to time on certain things. And to your point, if you are never failing, maybe you're not reaching too far or far enough.
Agreed.
Um, yeah, yeah. And so as you look to the future, last question, as you look to the
Yeah.
future, what are some of the things that you might try to do differently or more of in strengthening the culture, organizational culture? Even though it's great, you can always maybe make it better. What are the things that you're going to strive to do in the future?
So I think we've done a nice job of building the leadership team over the last few years, and I think now we're pretty fully intact. And so now we get to benefit from a full team, that's ready to go. And so I think what you're going to see is we've set a very high, a grand vision and a goal that's, a 10 to 20-year goal. And I think we've done a nice job of that over the last couple of years. Now, with all that grand vision and that 10 to 20-year goal, we need to start setting these annual priorities to be on the level of some of these grand goals. And so what we just talked about, what I'm expecting from the team is really to set some pretty amazing goals. Ones that once the first time it comes out of their mouths, they might think it's impossible, or that's going to be really, really hard to do. This is probably the next step for our organization, that we have leaders and we have just employees that are willing to do that, willing to put themselves out there. We talk about the transformational things that we want to do as an organization, right? We want to make sure that we create an infrastructure that can reach all 800,000 plus people facing food insecurity in San Diego County, that infrastructure and the programming is built, that we can do that we can provide that access. If you need food, we can get to 800,000 people. That's not done in any county I'm aware of across the country that provide that level of access.
Right.
That's a transformational thing that we're looking to do.
Huge.
To get there, we need our leaders and all parts of this organization setting transformational goals to do that. So I think that's the next step in our journey, is that we're doing that and we're aligned like that throughout the whole organization.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you certainly have the shared vision. You certainly have great people. You've told us that you've got some awesome tools that are helping to strengthen the team. And it sounds like you are well on your way to achieving that goal over the next couple of decades. And we'll all be cheering you on for sure, because it's an issue, a challenge that absolutely needs to be tackled and won. And so we just wish you all the best. And thank you, Casey, for sharing some amazing expertise and wisdom with our group, with our audience. There's so much here for the audience to unpack. I have no doubt that it will positively impact many, many, many leaders today and in the future who have the opportunity to hear what you've told us. And that brings us to the end of our podcast today. And we thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to the podcast and also be on the lookout for other podcasts as well. We have our Mastering Fundraising podcast. We also have our Nonprofit Edge podcast. They all interview extraordinary individuals who are doing some of the most important work in the community and attempting to understand how we all can benefit from their expertise and knowledge. But until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you all to do what you can for this world by leading for good. Thank you all. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations. We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. Please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.